Hi there. This video is going to study the relationship between biotechnology and community. This is the third video in a series looking at the relationship between agri-food and community impacts. And we have a special case here in terms of biotechnology. And one of the hallmarks of rural communities traditionally has been self-sufficiency and sovereignty, food sovereignty more specifically, being able to feed yourself. New technologies coming out of the biotech sphere have threatened some of this self-sufficiency by fostering a kind of dependence of rural communities, especially on seed companies. So, what is biotech? Biotechnology is the application of genetic modification to create seed varieties that have a number of desirable qualities, such as built-in uh, pest resistance or drought resistance. And of course, those sound like wonderful things to add to the mixture of agriculture. And they do have some notable advantages, but they also carry some concerns and risks that we'll be considering. The legal basis for biotechnology comes from the Supreme Court ruling Gilbert versus Chakrabarty, which ruled that it's legal to patent these seed designs. In other words, to patent life, as many people have put it. So the precedent to patent life was set, and before that, it would have been illegal to have a patent on a seed variety. And this allowed seed technology to go private, whereas before this, different seed varieties were considered a public good, and many farmers could just pick up seeds at a local land grant university, for instance. So, in terms of biotechnology, these newly designed patented seeds with the built in advantages of pest resistance and so forth also have built into them termination so that you can't recycle them. You can't get new seeds from your plants. And if you do try to do that, the company that sells these seeds, because they've patented those seeds, can hold you accountable for stealing, which seems kind of strange. But this is the legal framework we're dealing with here. One of the big players, Monsanto, has spent $9 billion just in the 1990s alone buying various seed companies and attempting to corner the market. And many people said that looked like a play for a monopoly and potentially an antitrust case. And many also pointed out that the expenditure buying out all these companies was hard to justify given the economics, the lackluster yields. Up to then, the biotech products were not really paying for themselves. So all this investment was going into a technology that wasn't actually producing huge gains in terms of profitability. The yields versus the cost of input. Uh, However, it became more profitable for Monsanto, who was designing these seeds that fostered dependency on them. Farmers have to go to Monsanto for their seeds most of the time. And they also design their seeds to work specifically with their other products, such as their pesticides, like Roundup Ready cotton, for instance. So you buy this seed that's designed to work specifically with the Roundup uh, pesticide, and that maximizes yield, but that also ensures that there's a cornering of the market, not only in terms of the seed sales, but also the pesticide sales that go with it. So Monsanto's defense on their website claims that it's only through science, and by that, genetic engineering is the implication, that we'll ever be able to achieve the kind of crop yields we'll need to meet the demands of a world that is growing to perhaps unsustainable levels of 9, 10, or even 11 billion people. Uh, and to improve its image, Monsanto invested at one point in a smallholder program trying to aid small farmers who are maybe having difficulty paying for seeds and some of the other inputs, such as Roundup, that went with those seeds. And ultimately, this was a form of technical assistance, a one-way transfer of technology, and they ended the program in 2002. And there were few community benefits that emerged from that. Uh, Really, just a public image campaign. So, in terms of the effects of biotech, Yamaguchi studied BT corn, biotech, sorry, cotton, not corn, in India, and particularly studying the discourse around the adoption of this particular approach to farming for cotton. And it was mainly an economic discourse. That was the dominant or hegemonic discourse. The media reinforced it, this dominant frame, steering public information and discourse towards the economic gains that could be realized from biotech. And so there was an alignment of the media and the industrial special interests, looking a lot like what Logan and Molich might call a growth machine mentality. But does it actually work? The reality is there's never been a genetically engineered seed that has achieved a higher yield than a traditional seed. That is the difficult fact to justify in terms of promoting this dependence on these types of seeds. It's really an economic play by the companies who have come to corner the seed market. The built-in resistance, of course, it has the potential to maybe reduce pesticide use, which has some positive benefits in terms of health and the environment, but really has not really increased the yields. And the amount of energy going into the resistance limits to resistance is limiting the yields of individual plants. So when you build this internal resistance, it actually takes more energy from the plant, and therefore it produces less. So the effect of seed patents has been remarkable and notable. The inability to recycle seeds keeps farmers dependent. And another element of this that we haven't mentioned is the drift effect, that if you have a farm that does not use uh, genetically modified seeds, it's still possible, if your neighbor uses those seeds, for them to wind up in your field through this drift effect. And in fact, that has happened, and farmers have been accused of stealing seeds because their neighbors' seeds have drifted into their fields, and they've been caught and sometimes put on trial and sometimes even ruined financially. But uncertainty does remain in terms of the safety of biotech. That was one of the first concerns to arise among people who thought maybe biotech food would be bad for our health or bad for the environment. Uh, Environmentalists were concerned that this drift effect could also change local ecologies as genetically modified seeds perhaps entered into local ecosystems and perhaps created hybrid forms of plants that didn't exist before. And now you're altering the makeup of the local ecology, which can have ripple effects throughout, maybe even affecting some of the wildlife. France banned genetic modification a long time ago, and as has most of the European Union, but the U.S. continues to promote its use. This issue is complex, biotechnology, and requires a certain amount of scientific literacy even to grasp and understand and debate. So when we're trying to make public policy about it, this because of the complexity of the issue, it's hard to have robust public discourse, especially when that discourse is often turned into an economic discourse, as Yamaguchi found. So large segments of the public simply don't have much knowledge of this issue, even though it's been around for a while. It's only a small minority of people with advanced scientific understanding really have the capability to discuss the issue, which raises some important and fundamental questions about how successful we can have a democratic debate on this when really just the experts are equipped to debate it. So do we just rely on the experts to solve the issue? How do we make this more democratic? Many of the experts, by the way, of course, have interest in supporting the industry that funds them. So, having public experts, probably in universities and maybe some other non-governmental organizations, as part of this conversation is going to be important as we go forward. Okay, thanks for watching.